Hey everyone, it's your host Denis Sasquatch Bart for the Rock Fantasy Files. And tonight we have a special guest with our friend Jarvis Leatherby from both Night Demons and Cirith Ungol. So thank you so much, Jarvis, for joining us. And before we start a round of question and ask you a bunch of stuff about the amazing stuff you're doing, and we love listening. Where are you right now? What's happening? You're like in a vehicle somewhere?
Yeah, I'm in a car in Austin, Texas. We just wrapped up a month of touring in Europe and we flew here last night. We start a tour tomorrow in San Antonio. So just it was a good time to catch me and I'm glad to make time for you guys and here we are.
No rest for the wicked, right? In what
That's
time
it,
zone?
man. Yeah.
What time zone is your mind is right now?
You know what? I'm so used to this stuff, to be honest with you. I'm from California, and I also live part-time in Northern Ireland, and so I've been touring for 10 years straight. And even during the pandemic, during those travel bans, I was flying everywhere. Like nobody really stopped me. I was just doing it. Like literally, I'd be on planes with 350 seats with like three people on it. So like
Wow.
I'm just used to I'm really used to the thing. I don't really get jet lag or anything, and just I know how to just keep it going. It
There-
takes some time though. It does really. I used to have real problems with the time differences, but I'm good now.
You're not like typical musician who, like some singers who sometimes get a little windy and they can perform, right? So you've been a lot able to go through this, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, I try and take care of the voice. You need a
yeah.
lot of rest and hydration, and and a good attitude. Actually, that kind of gets you farther than anything.
Well, good
So,
on you, my friend. So we'll start like a bunch of rounds of question,
thanks.
and I'll defer to my good friend James Delisle because he was the one who put this together for us. And I know personally when he said like Jarvis from Night Demon, I love like Outsider. I really loved the last record,
Oh, cool.
and became a fan immediately, then start to listen to the older stuff. But yeah, James, Mike is up. Ask your question, buddy.
Okay, what's up, Jarvis? Thank you for
Hey, what's
joining us
up,
tonight.
James? Thank you.
Um, my first question is, let's see, what should I start with? So I was at work before. I work at an independent record store, and I was listening to Outsider, and I was listening to Year of the Demon as
Uh-huh.
well. So I'm listening to Outsider, and then I put on Year of the Demon, and I get to Are You Out There, which is one of my favorite songs off of said album.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And I hear you singing about Johnny in that song, which
Yeah.
is your main character in Outsider. And I'm wondering, did you give us a taste of what Outsider was supposed to be story wise with that tune Are You Out There before Outsider came out?
No. The honest answer is no, but there eventually is a tie-in that's going to happen with that. So Johnny is like we have everybody needs a Johnny. Then Lizzie has a Johnny. Riot has a Johnny. You know what I mean? Like you gotta
Yeah,
have a Johnny if you're in a legit band, and he's got to be like multiple dudes, right? Like that's just like Johnny come lately, right?
sure.
So the song "Are You Out There" was written about Phil Lynott, and it was written from the perspective of his friends and family around the time that he died. About like, around the time, like shortly before he passed away. So I took like that kind of perspective, of like what the people close to him were thinking about him when near his like in the height of his decline. And so that is kind of like um a hypothetical kind of a situation, of basically, like Thin Lizzy, he's got the song, Got to Give It Up, right? and he
Right.
never really did that. So like this is kind of the message in there is like, hey dude, you're falling down the tubes here. Like you got to do something to participate in your own rescue here. And and because it's really sad. I mean, it's like he I had a lot of problems with drugs and alcohol in my life. They weren't a problem until they were. But when I got sober eventually, and I idolized this guy. But what I realized is like, the kind of person that he became, like I didn't want to idolize my heroes anymore for the debauchery. I was following in down that same path, and it's like if we had a guy like that still around today, I mean, God, can you imagine like what would have happened since 1986 until now? I mean, we would have gotten so much more. And so that's kind of in a nutshell that. Outsider's a concept album. Yes, the main character's name is Johnny. I probably shouldn't talk about this, but we've been the 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 album was written based on a film script that I wrote, and we basically put the music and the story to the script, made the album. I'm not a filmmaker, and I never thought we would actually make the film, but we have. There's a big fan of the band that is a accomplished director, and in the past year and a half, the film's been in production. So it is
Oh,
going
wow.
to be a full motion picture, and the end credit songs is gonna be "Are You Out There?" So
Oh, shit.
it's kind of funny. If you listen to the song lyrics of "Are You Out There" and you don't know it's about Phil Lynott, it does really kind of lend itself to the story of Outsiders. So yeah, the answer to your question is yes and no.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. And that's a great question, and I appreciate you asking that, and that means a lot that you put that much thought into it. So thank you.
No doubt.
Yeah,
And
that's a
Are You
tough.
Out There was released as a 7-inch single with The Sun Goes Down was the B-side, correct?
Right,
Right.
right. So what we did in 2020, this wasn't planned because our plan was in 2020, starting April 2020, we were going to release a 7-inch single that was a brand new track, and the B-side was going to be a cover song that y- you know it either had something to do with the A side or was kind of close to it. And every 5 weeks we were going to release a 7-inch while we were on tour throughout that year. And nobody, like, we didn't tell the press about it. We didn't do a pre-order. We didn't do anything. And every 5 weeks we were just going to drop a new single. We ended up doing this. The pandemic hits, our tour gets canceled, but all these records are still pressed and the label has the whole plan. Everything is still going forward. We kind of were bummed out about that, but it actually worked in our favor because everybody was home. We had everybody's attention.
Mm.
And we had spent all of 2019 touring and traveling and recording with our dream producers around the world. The way we were able to work with all these guys was, we would say, hey, look, we want to come in and work with you for 2 days and record a song. And they were like, okay, great. I don't have to spend a half a year with the band. So like that song was recorded in Chicago with Steve Albini, and it was recorded all analog to tape. And we've got a little short documentary about that we filmed. That you could check out on YouTube. Hold on, let me get the light back on in here in this car. But yeah, so that was cool. That plan rolled out. I think the fans at one point though, these singles started coming out in April, and then by August they were like, "Look, like guys, like when is this going to end?" Like, because the collectors, it's like they want every variant. There's like 3 different colors of vinyl, like for every release, and it's kind of like, look, are these part of an album? What's going on? Like, tell us something. But we ended up stopping after 5 singles, and what you have there, James, is the compilation. Year of the Demon is the compilation of those singles. So it's the five singles with the 5 B-sides, including the live stuff that we did with Uli John Roth. So it's pretty cool. And 2020 was the year of the demon for many people,
It
it's
was.
like,
Sure.
right. In more ways than one. So, yeah, I'm proud of that compilation, and it's a cool thing to have.
I've always loved your bass tone, man. You get a really nasty, gnarly sound. And I know you play with a pick, as do I. So fucking kudos there. But
Thank
what's your
you.
main gear? Like, what's your like go-to, the bass you always grab when you want to record, and the bass you always want to grab when you start to write something?
I like writing on instruments that I'm not familiar with because it brings out a new thing. I believe like guitars have like a soul left inside of it. So if I can find a vintage guitar, I think people leave songs in guitars. I really do. Just playing on something different, you start to play out of the box because normally if you're playing your same guitar all the time, you have this muscle memory. But I mean, I've always played flying, but like the power is in the hands and in the mind, you know.
No
But for
doubt.
my tone, I mean, it's just I don't use a lot of low end at all. I use guitar cabinets and like a lot of
Same.
distortion, and I like to get the definition, and I like to let our sound man have more room to see. The thing is with bass nowadays with all this modern technology, everybody subs it out so low from the amplifier perspective that when the sound man gets it, it's like, well, what am I going to do? What can I do with this? Like, make it more low end. I mean, they're already pumping it through subs, so it's like I like to have my tone is just like a bigger guitar, and I let
Right.
our sound man who knows the band really well, like have if you want more low end in it, you do that. If these bands, so you got to be really careful. There's a lot of three-piece bands that the bass player is just um yeah, I don't know. I play lead bass. You know what I mean? It's a totally different mentality.
Like
And
Lemmy.
it's not for everybody, but it works for what we do. Yeah, pretty much like Lemmy. I think I try and dial in a little bit more note definition than Lemmy had. He was kind of a strummer. I'm more of a precision player. So
Definitely.
but yeah, Lemmy, it's a mix between like Lemmy, Steve Harris, and Geezer Butler. That's kind of those are my go-to dudes there.
Yeah, and you
Maple
guys,
neck or ebony fretboard?
I use ebony fretboards. I got custom basses that have them, but I'm a rosewood fan too. But maple is great too. It's like it keeps it bright, but I change my strings every show. I use a new pack of strings. So that's the secret. I like that piano tone. It's not a cheap hobby, I'll tell you that. Bass
No, it's
yeah,
not.
strings are,
No, it's
you
not.
know, I
yeah, yeah.
I
Bass
have
strings
I
aren't
have an
cheap.
endorsement, but I don't get them. But I have an endorsement, but I don't get them for free. Yeah, yeah. So
Right.
I get a little break on the price, but they're not free. So
Wow.
yeah.
Somebody else want to ask a question, or am I going still?
You got
I can go. I can go with a question, and then we can come
Uh,
back.
Go
If
ahead.
not, it'll be the James show. You'll have your 27 question in a row.
cool, man.
Jarvis, you did talk about Phil Lynott as one of your obvious influence, and kudos to that because I think everybody on this show is a huge Tin Lizzy fan. But aside Mr. Lynott, like who inspired you, and who some of your influences from when you were little to now?
As far as bass playing or just musically?
Music in general, and bass playing
Yeah,
if you want to touch on that. Yeah,
yeah. Well, like my top five bass players, like I mentioned, is like Lemmy, Steve Harris, Geezer Butler, Phil Lynott, and Cliff Burton. Like that's like if you kind of put that all in there, like that's what I strive for. I don't like any one of them like I wouldn't like to sound like any one of them individually tone wise, but all of them put together somehow is kind of like I think that's what I've accomplished tonally. I mean, they're much better players than me, but tonally. So, um, but my dad was in a band with Michael Anthony from Van Halen. They were in their first band together, and so I kind of grew up in a Van Halen household, and
nice.
those guys were around a bit when I was a kid, and like I didn't care at the time. I was just like, yeah, those
Wow.
are dad's friends, like whatever. And then I started to get older, and they did the Monsters of Rock thing, and I was 7 years old when that tour happened, and I was fortunate enough to like that was one of my first things that I did. And I was like, I saw Metallica and I was like, whoa, man, like I got to do this stuff. And then I started paying more attention to what dad's friends were doing. And, my dad, I remember one night I kind of like snuck into his vinyl collection and I pulled out Van Halen 1 shit out of me, but I was literally afraid. And you're listening to it and looking at that gatefold, just the black and white picture of them and then listening to Van Halen 1. And it's kind of funny. I was listening to vinyl on such low volume where you can almost just put your ear to the record and hear it kind of, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's
yeah.
the sounds coming out of the grooves. I didn't want to wake up my dad and just I mean this to this day, I mean he's given me those records now, but like back then when I was young, I don't know if he'd be pissed or whatever, but uh and just listening to Eruption, and just being like, how, because I remember like Two Live Crew put out this record, As Nasty as They Want to Be, and it was banned for anybody under 18. And I had to get my hands on that at a very young age just because it was forbidden. And rap was like a big thing for suburban white kids in California. I don't know how, but it was. And when I heard they had a song called The Fuck Shop on there, and it started with the Sweet Child O' Mine. It started with the Sweet Child O' Mine intro, the guitar, just slash guitar, right into the first riff of it talking about love. And so it was the rap stuff that got me into metal because I was like, when I heard those two riffs, I was like, holy shit, like how do you make a guitar sound like that? I just wanted to play guitar from then on. So that was it, Deep Purple, my parents were into that, and I started playing drums, and yeah, it just kind of all started from those were like the classic, those were the main things: Sabbath, Purple, Van Halen, and Two Live Crew. Yeah.
Perfect,
Nice.
perfect,
Yeah.
perfect recipe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
cool. Very cool. I don't know what I would have done if like I guess if I see my dad walking in with fucking Michael Anthony, I'd be like, whoa.
It did
But
it. You
Oh
have to
yeah.
put yourself in the
I
picture at the
know.
time, I
Yeah.
wanted to play Nintendo, you know what I mean? Like it's like,
Yeah.
and it's not like they were sitting around jamming or anything either.
Yeah.
So it's just I think, I was at Eddie and Valerie's wedding. I don't remember it. I was so young.
Oh
I think
shit.
I think there's a picture of me somewhere. I don't recall, but yeah, again, it's just like you don't know these things,
Yeah. They
like
bring you to
what.
the wedding and you want to go home and play Nintendo with fucking
Yeah,
Michael.
yeah, you don't. Yeah, exactly.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah.
Very, very cool. Very cool, man. All right, Tony, you want to ask some questions?
Yeah, cause Jarvis and I, we go back. I've been following the band since the first EP came out, the self
Yeah,
titled the Night Demon record. Yeah, so
there
they
it
came
is.
around. I think I saw you for the first time in 2014 with Raven, and been going and following you guys ever since, and always putting out good stuff. And these guys do some of the best covers. I mean, you guys could just do a whole probably 2 CD set of all the cool covers that you've got. New wave of British metal covers. I mean, just classic rock covers, everything. I mean, they've touched on a little bit of everything, and that's just great stuff. But I gotta ask, I mean, I know you guys, you're from Ventura, so
Mhm.
how did it come to be that you reignited the flame that is Cirith Ungol and get those guys going again? Because I swear, man, these last few records they've put out have been some of the best stuff they've ever done. And
Yeah,
it's just
thanks.
such a cult band that has just had a revitalization of their career. I mean, it's like, and I think you're the guy who spearheaded that, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, it's kind of like the Van Halen thing, to be honest. So I grew up in Ventura, California, which has a very rich history of hardcore punk, like 80s stuff, like the skate punk era kind of came out of there. And there's some great bands. Like we have a big four from Oxnard to Ventura: Ill Repute, Dr. No, Stalag 13, and Aggression. And those guys are legends. And so there was no metal scene at all in Ventura. There's Night Demon and Cirith Ungol. I mean, those are the only bands that ever made it out of town. And there was no burgeoning local metal scene whatsoever in the history of the town. So I was a metal kid in the punk scene, and Cirith Ungol was the name that was always thrown around. And you would for years see, original copies of Frost and Fire. That record came out in 81, October of 81. Same month and year another little known band started, uh, with the big M. But they put out that record on their own. Bands were not doing that back then. Punk bands were doing it, but metal bands were not putting out a fucking 12-inch on their own, and they couldn't get signed. They did that. But you could buy a copy of that on eBay now for a few $100s. But at the time that I was growing up, the dollar bins in the thrift stores were full of those records. Like you couldn't, everywhere you looked, somebody had a copy, like as a fucking to prop up a table. You know what I mean? Like those guys. This is long before the internet was anything that worthy, and it was always thrown around. The old punks would make fun of them. They would talk about them as like, oh, you should have seen there used to be this band Cirith Ungol, and they were just so grandiose and had the biggest drum kit you'd ever seen, and they were such rock stars, and they had the flashy clothes, and like they nobody ever went to see them. You know what I mean? Like it was kind of a joke with the punks. Because in the punk scene, there's a lot of not really elitism like there is in the metal scene, but just punks they have like guilt about success. Do you know what I mean? Or anything that resembles any kind of outer confidence, really. It's tough. Punk is just like the metal scene is now. In the 80s, the metal scene was not a bunch of outcasts in Southern California. It was trendy. You know what I mean? It was mall rat kids. It wasn't the punks were the ones that were the outcasts. They were the strange people, the societal rejects, if you will, and so they had come up with something where they could come together and accept each other, so. But anyway, I had heard Cirith Ungol growing up, and I hated it. Like I just didn't get it. I didn't like. I hated the production. I didn't like the weird. And when I was a generation or two later. It's like I wanted my metal I needed it to sound like the Black Album. That's the production that was like, wow. You know what I mean? So I never gave him a chance. And through the years, as my ears matured, I had a much greater appreciation for it. So to make a long story short, I started when I was 16 years old. I started promoting concerts. By the time I was like 18 or 19, I had taken this college fund that my grandparents had like saved up for me since I was born. I dropped out of high school and I started promoting actual big concerts. And I was bringing bands over from Europe. I brought Dark Funeral over for their first US tour. I was doing bands that now are huge with this resurgence were nothing then. Like I did King Diamond a couple times. I did Merciful Fate. I get 100 people at the show. I was part of the UFO reunion with Shanker. I was a kid. I loved all this stuff, but I spent all my money helping these bands do this stuff. And so I had a big background in concert promotion. Years later, I started Night Demon. I started touring the world, and I saw that so many people around the world loved Cirith Ungol, especially in Europe, and I couldn't believe it. So I've been friends with the guys for a while, and I would send them photos of tattoos, patches, T-shirts, all this stuff, and go, guys, people care about this band, your band. 25 years after you broke up, it's like there's all this stuff going on. you've been denying offers for years to reunite. Like, let's try something. So I started my own festival called Frost and Fire in Ventura in 2015. And I asked the guys to come and just sign autographs, and they agreed to do it. A lot of these guys hadn't seen each other in decades. They all met, had a good time meeting up, and people flew from all over the world just to meet them. So that kind of started it off. And from then, they had broke up 25 years and played in other bands. They didn't touch an instrument for 25 years. So they kind of had to relearn. It's not like riding a bike. They had to relearn how to play after so long. So Night Demon was pretty instrumental in helping them do that. And it's a long ass story, but that's the gist of it. And we've been back since early 2016. And yeah, have put out 2 full-length records, a live album, another live album that's coming out next year, an EP of some reimagined songs from the 70s that were never heard by the public, a single called Witch's Game that was in a film. And we're on this farewell run right now, but the band's on fire, and the old guys don't really want to hang it up. So let's see what happens. There's still a lot of places that are on the books that we're going for the first time. But it's been amazing. It's been an amazing ride, and it's probably the the most proud I'm of anything I've ever been a part of. I'm most proud of the fact of being able to actually get these guys back together, because a lot of people respected in the music industry actually told me when I was telling them that I was going to do this 10 years ago that there's no way I would be able to do it and not to waste my time. And if they couldn't do it, there's no way I could do it. And fuck them, I did
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And I've seen you guys live a couple of times, man. And it was great. I just saw you at the Maryland Doom Fest recently. So
that was a fucking great time, dude.
Yeah, yeah. And Tim's so cool. That's the first time I had met him at the Hell's Heroes briefly. We got to talk to him a little more that night. That was really cool.
He's the coolest, man. Him and Rob. Yeah.
I think I was telling him about I remember seeing, like, back when we first got cable years ago. It was I think we had HBO or something for it, and they were showing Richard Pryor live at the Sunset Strip, and it's showing a camera like going down the Sunset Strip, and the marquee is it the whiskey, and it says
that the whiskey. It's the Whiskey A Go-Go.
Yeah, Stormer and
Cirith Ungol and
Cirith Ungol. Yeah, I was like, wow, that was just
it's incredible. I mean, I love that. These guys, there are so many things about these guys. I mean, I control the archives, and they saved everything, man. And like, there is some amazing shit that they have. I mean, like a handwritten letter from Brian Slagle saying, "Hey, I'm thinking about putting out a compilation, and I don't have a record label, but you know what I mean? Like, that's Metal Massacre 1. I've got letters from the 70s from the estate of J.R. Tolkien, granting them the use of the name Cirith Ungol. This is long before Lord of the Rings films or anything like that.
Yeah.
I've got pictures of them hanging out with like Rush in like 74, like smoking pot, or like Judas Priest or Iron Maiden, like the times when nobody was going to see these bands. Like, they've got a pretty cool story. And again, like I said, I'm just super proud to just have a hand in it.
Did you ever think about putting a documentary together?
Yes, and actually, it's funny because I toured with Anvil twice. Night Demons toured with Anvil twice, and so I kind of like know the ins and outs of that whole process. But the time to do it was the time when I was reforming the band, and we decided against. They didn't want it. They didn't want to do it. But I'm telling you, a lot of heavy shit was happening at that time. I mean, we were getting one of the guitar players out of a homeless shelter at the time. The drummer was about to retire from his job. We got the key to the city from Ventura. They announced like Cirith Ungol Day, like
Wow.
there was the whole reforming of the band. There was teaching the guys how to play again. There was a lot of really big things that happened. There was us going through the master tapes of the original records and rehearsing at the recording studio that they recorded all those records at. There was a lot of things that happened, but you had to be there to see it. And like to do a film now, it would just, we don't have that archival footage. We don't have it would have needed to happen then organically. Those are the best films. Like, the Pentagram film that Sean did. I mean, that's one of the greatest documentaries ever. It's funny because Pentagram just opened for Cirith Ungol last week. And it was cool to see Bobby do so well. But that's a compelling documentary because real things were happening during that time. You know what I mean? And it's just I did consider it from the minute that we said go. But it's just not something they didn't feel comfortable putting their lives on display like that, so we didn't do it. But I will say, if we had done it, I do think that today we'd be in a different place of popularity. But whatever. The real fans are there, and everything happens for the right reason. And I don't have any regrets about not doing it. But yeah, that's the deal.
I couldn't believe when I had the similar experience as you, Jarvis, when I was a kid. Went to the record store, bought King of the Dead because of the cover. I had
Yeah.
no idea. I was expecting like Battery, Celtic Frost, Sodom,
Yeah.
and it was import for up here in Canada, and I think it was like around $20, which is the time was a
Yeah.
lot of money for a
Oh,
record.
for sure.
And then I get home with the cover and everything, and I put it on. And I'm like, what the fuck?
Well,
Yeah,
at least it
but
wasn't Molly Hatchet.
yeah, but after that, like after when I saw that when Forever Black came out, I'm like, oh my God, I gotta go listen to that, and I was
Uh,
completely blown. Like I was just like, okay, okay. So now I went back to the original record, and now I'm understanding better what was supposed to be
I
happening.
mean,
Yeah,
right. I think King of the Dead is a perfect album. It's their best album by far in my mind. And
yeah,
like just content wise, from front to back, like it's an
yeah.
incredible uh collection of songs. Yeah, it really is. But it's funny you mentioned Celtic Frost. I'm pretty good friends with Tom Warrior, and he told me when we go to Switzerland, we always go out to dinner, and he told me that when he broke up Hellhammer, him and Martin were sitting there, and in one night they planned out what their next move was going to be, and they said we're going to start a new band, and they were listening to Frost and Fire at the time on vinyl, and they said, what are we going to call it? And when they came up with Celtic Frost, they took that Frost from Frost and Fire,
Oh wow.
and they
Wow.
they they plotted out what the first three albums were going to be, and the titles and everything. And I was blown away when he told me that.
Wow.
Wow.
Amazing.
Amazing. So you
So
see,
again, it's
yeah,
crazy. You don't the art life is a crazy life, and you don't really. There's so many people from Cirith Ungol to fucking Fats Domino. It's like just your influence doesn't necessarily compute to fame and fortune all the time, but there are things that happen in your life when you're on this artistic journey for 50 plus years, like it does trickle down somewhere. You know what I'm saying? And even the fact that there was a Metal Massacre documentary that just came out, a film about that first compilation on Metal Blade, and James Hetfield says he's like like Cirith Ungol was headlining the Metal Massacre release party in San Francisco, and they canceled. And we went up there and we met Cliff and the Exodus guys, and you know what I mean. So it's like even things that bands don't do sometimes can change metal history. It's unreal. Yeah,
crazy, crazy. All right, Ralph, you've been super
yeah. There's
quiet
Ralph.
and patient. Come on, my
Yeah,
friend. Your
it's
turn
great just
now.
listening to I love hearing these stories. Love meeting you here, Jarvis. I got One Foot in Hell on cassette when I was a kid, 16 years old, and I was already like into Rain and Blood and everything, so I thought this was going to
Yeah.
be another Celtic Frost album, but it wasn't. But it was such a unique sounding band. I wasn't listening to really anything like this at the time, and I've been a fan ever since. I loved after 25 years, you get the band back together, and I love the new stuff. Talking about documentaries, there's a cool little 40-minute documentary, Metal School. They like focus on a band
Yes.
and they do
I did watch that. Yeah.
yeah, that was really cool. They mentioned that they showed the flyer of the shows that you were just talking about, that you got them back together to signing for the first one and then to actually get them to play. And about a year ago, Pete Pardo from the Sea of Tranquility, he gave your latest album the really great review, and I was like, oh, this sounds really good. I'm gonna go out and buy it. And then when I went online to buy it, I ended up seeing this one, and this one looked a little bit more my speed, so
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
grabbed this and I loved it, man. It's like the traditional metal, but it's got like the cool evil lyrics. And it makes me think, wow, now they're going on this great tour with Overkill and King Diamond. And I was just wondering, like, I didn't realize you just kind of mentioned that you had a connection with King Diamond way back, getting booking them shows and stuff. But I was
Yeah.
just thinking, like, what a break in how important is this tour to be touring America with two of the classic bands, Overkill and King Diamond? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't think King has any idea who I am from those old days. This was just something that came down the pipe and we got the call. I'm looking forward to it for sure. I mean, our set, we only have 30 minutes and our set is leaning very old school. We're going to be playing a lot off that record and our first EP. I saw King Diamond 10 years ago, around when that album came out. That album is going to be 10 next year. Um, and I thought we were ready then, to be honest. And I saw the show and I said, we need to be opening for this guy. And so that's what we're doing. We're going to be playing in front of his fans, for the people that have probably never heard us. The people that know us, they know us. It's that they know when they can see us. We Night Demon's been touring since 2014, and even with the 2-year break for the pandemic, we've just played our 800th show. So we get around, and people know when they can see us. We don't feel like we need to play a bunch of new stuff for those people. They know that they've had opportunities to check us out. So we're here to show the true colors of what this band is and how we started and where we came from, and that those songs are still very relevant. We change from album to album. We like to feel like we progress. We don't want to repeat ourselves. And every band will tell you that their latest album is their best album, and they should feel that way. But I don't really feel that way. I think all of our albums are different, and if somebody likes an album better than another, I'm fine with that. We still, there's not a song that we haven't played live as Night Demon, and we still play a lot of the old stuff live. Our songs are really short. We're not your traditional metal band in that way. We're like the Beatles of traditional metal, and like we get in and get out so we can play a lot of songs live. So
Awesome.
we're like the Beatles in that way, song length, not in any other way. But yeah, we're really looking forward to it. And yeah, thanks. I appreciate you guys picking up all this music, man, all the physical copies of our records. I mean, it really does mean a lot. And I think, we try and make music that holds up over time. So and just like Cirith Ungol, you got to have the great, we really concentrate on the artwork and the themes of what we're trying to put out.
Yeah, even the live album looks like Kiss got a classic Kiss Alive live shot on the front. Love that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Very
That's
nice.
cool.
All right, James, you get more questions. I think you do.
Speaking of this live album,
Yes.
so you guys do Evil Like a Knife with Athenar from Midnight, who's another band that I
Yeah.
fucking love. I believe are you still managing them?
Yeah, I've managed them since 2018.
So do you ever think of like doing a collab with them, like a full on, like maybe an EP or like, doing something full on where
I've
it's like
thought,
Midnight Demon?
We did a tour together of Europe
Clever.
and we called it the Midnight Demon. Yeah. But no, not so much. I mean, we did that song. We covered that song because we recorded that live album in Cleveland, and that's like their home base. And so we thought it'd be cool
Yeah.
if he came out and did it with us. But that was before I managed that was a year before I managed the band that we actually recorded that concert. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny. I mean, he's a very close person to me. Um, but we have such a business relationship too, that I mean, I talk to him every day. In the words of Dave Mustaine, talk to him every day, but I do all the time. I think we kind of keep the artistic side, our artistic minds separate. Because I'm kind of the business executor, and my job is to just do everything that he wants to do artistically. I'm a pretty good manager in that sense. I'll give advice sometimes where I think we disagree on something, but I'll always, at the end of the day, go with what he wants to do. I don't want to be a manager that controls somebody's career. I'd like to give guidance where I have some expertise, but I want artists that I work with to be, at the end of the day, I want them to be completely proud of what they've done with me, because so many bands will tell you that they've made wrong moves that they didn't feel right about because people that were handling them pushed them in a certain direction. And so if we ever do a collab, that's the end of my answer.
We lost you there for a second.
Yeah, we kind of lost you for a second. You're cutting in and out a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. What I was saying was that basically my goal for him is to do everything he wants to do artistically, and me to execute on the business end. So like if we're going to collaborate, then he would have to, if he have to be something that he would have to bring up and want to do. But I'm open.
Okay.
I'm open to it. Yeah.
Very nice.
Killer. Yeah, we didn't mention Jarvis's management. It's Iron Grip Management.
Right.
How many bands do you have on the roster now?
5. Night Demon, Visigoth, Satan, Cirith Ungol, and Midnight. And
Wow.
I'm not ever trying to expand the roster. I get asked a lot, at least once a month, to pick something up. There's been some pretty big bands that wanted to work with me, which is pretty flattering. But like you only have so much time in the day, and I have a staff too that I employ that helps me a lot with some of the day-to-day stuff. But these are special bands. I think that these are bands that are going to be remembered in history for what they do. We're all different from each other, but we're all good friends, and it's like an old school mentality. We're just a cool gang. We're not exclusive, we're not this inclusive elitist at all. We love all bands and all styles, but there's something special about this crop of bands, and I'm fulfilled with it, and these bands will be on my tombstone.
Yeah, it's great. You do so many things.
Yeah.
You go back to basics with the grassroots way that you promote. And I mean, one of the first things I think I ever got from you was he did a mixtape that he sold.
Yeah.
With like up and coming traditional metal bands, some that were already established. I mean, I love this tape. I mean, it even looked like an old TDK tape.
Yeah.
I mean, it had the songs are like handwritten. The band, you can't see it here; it's too much glare.
Yeah.
But it's just like that. That's just so cool. I mean, I love seeing stuff like this because
that's so cool that you have that.
This is where I come from, and so many of us tape traded and stuff like that back in the day.
It's cool how he also, all 5 bands that he manages they all could have been come out in 1984. Like every one of those
Exactly.
bands, Visigoth, they sound like they could have been from back then. And Satan, of course, was from back then. And
Yeah.
Midnight has that old
Yeah.
Motorhead Venom sound, so it's almost like perfect. Like
Right.
all the bands together, it's a real pack. That's a great tour package right there. At all 5 bands.
Yeah. One day
Yeah.
we'll do the Iron Grip tour for sure, But the thing is, like, with that mixtape, somebody dubbed a new wave of traditional heavy metal. Like, I'm fine with that. I wouldn't never put ourselves in any category, but if the fans do it, then it's something, right? There's some truth to it. At that time, I believe 2015 is when we released that. There were so many bands that were doing this, and we were one of the only bands that were actually seriously touring, and I wanted to inspire other bands to get out there and do it. And what I wanted to do was create some kind of a time capsule. What I love about compilations, especially from back in the day, is it really puts you back into that year of what was happening. And so that tape has a lot of bands from that era, but also some of the classic bands that were putting out good new songs. Riot 5, Raven, Hyrax finally put out a record, so I wanted to include those bands too, and just be like, hey, here's a snapshot in 2015 of what was happening in heavy metal, like the real shit, the good shit, and I'm glad that you showed that, and that that tape sold out 666 hand numbered copies, and I'm glad that people still have that, and I hope years from now that will be looked at as like a good snapshot of what heavy metal was doing in that time.
Yeah, for sure.
You don't see compilations anymore, really. I mean, back in the day, that's how we found a lot of new bands. I found Denny's band Aggression from Speed Metal Hell 2. That was a classic tape back in the 80s, and it's almost like a forgotten thing because now every kid now, they just hit the computer, they hit YouTube, that any band they could think of is right there.
Well, it's kind of funny. It's like a double-edged sword, however you look at it. Like, everything's a compilation now. You know what I mean? I mean, you hit one song on YouTube or Spotify, you're gonna just get an algorithm that's gonna play you some kind of you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But the algorithms are not curated. That's the problem. And so you're gonna get a bunch of stuff that makes no sense. This is heavily there that we're sleeping on each other's floors from fucking Japan to Alaska, So it's proper. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
What else you got, James?
Yeah.
What's up with a new album?
We went to the studio early this year and recorded the first few songs. Listening to them now, I think they could probably be better. So we'll see what's up. I mean, our main goal right now is to finish. We're doing this King Diamond tour, which is pretty long, and we're going to tour with Queensryche early next year. And then we've got some South American dates. And then we're going to make this film. So this film has been the hardest thing I've ever done. There's 52 people working on this thing, and it's costing me every penny that I've ever had in my life. Our goal was not to sell it to a studio. We're producing it ourselves and financing it ourselves, and we're doing it on actual film. There's some legit actors in it, and we just want to control this thing and own it and use the band as a vehicle to drive it. If you think the music business doesn't make any money, try making a film. It's a death sentence. But I think it's an artistic statement that we need to make. And Night Demon's always been a band that's done things completely unconventionally and have tried things out, whether it's putting out 7-inch singles every 5 weeks or still making tour programs or having a weekly podcast that runs 240 episodes in a row, never missing a week. I mean, like, you name it, like, if there's a challenge out there, we're going to do it. And hopefully this thing, builds up some cult status one day or something. I don't know, but we're also not a band that puts out an album every year. We really, really, really focus hard on the material when we put out a record. So I'm hoping summer 2026 we'll have a new record, but we'll see. We're not going to force it. We're going to actively work on it, but it's not going to come out until it's ready.
Awesome.
But in the meantime, you got you got a lot of stuff there out there from us to check out,
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, looking
I got a
forward to see. Yeah, just no, I was just saying I'm looking forward to see Night Demon in Vancouver. I'm in Vancouver, British Columbia. Never had the chance to see Night Demon, so I'll be there. I got my tickets. I'm ready to go.
Dude,
And
please. Well, okay. I was gonna say if you would be happy to have you as a guest if you need tickets. So
yeah,
yeah, we're excited. We're actually funny thing about that Vancouver show. So we're playing in Salt Lake City a couple days before. There's
yeah,
a day off to drive to Vancouver because you need that day. But
yeah.
so what we're doing on the day off is we're flying to Mexico because we're gonna play with Cirith Ungol. We're gonna play with Cirith Ungol in Mexico City. And then the morning of the Vancouver show, we're flying up to Vancouver to meet up with our
Wow.
crew to play that. So yeah, we're
Damn.
staying
Okay.
busy.
Damn.
Well, I gotta come and say hi for sure. Then I want to hear about
Uh,
your travel. Let's
please,
go,
please do. Yes,
Ralph.
absolutely.
Like
Absolutely.
if we want to, we're already at the top of the hour. Maybe one last question from everyone, and then we'll be able to wrap this interview. Ralph, you're up, buddy.
Cool. Yeah, so I heard that you did some live gigs with new wave of British heavy metal legends Jaguar. I didn't even know that they were ever active at
Yes.
all. So I'd just like
Yeah.
to hear whatever you have to say about how that all came about.
So yeah, so we covered Axe Crazy on our first EP. We started touring on our first EP and we only had 4 songs out. So when we went to Europe, um, we had been signed to SPV, but they didn't want to re-release the EP. They just wanted our first full length that was going to be out the following year. And we're like, look, man, we got to have some shit to play on stage. I mean, we have all these songs written for the first album, but they're not out. So I mean, what do we do? We could play some of them, but people don't have the stuff. We need something out that has more than 4 songs. So High Roller Records said, "Hey, we'll release this EP. Can we make it an expanded version?" So we're like, "Yeah, let's fucking record some cover songs." So we did Diamond Head's Lightning to the Nations. We did Jaguar's Axe Crazy. Paul Merrill, the singer from Power Games, the Jaguar album, was like one of my biggest vocal influences. I kind of learned how to sing by listening to him. And um, I was in love with that album and the single that they put out too with their first singer. But so basically Jaguar they were doing some gigs and it was my goal to see them in concert. They had a new singer um that they had for a while. He was kind of a goof off, but he wasn't that bad of a singer. But he would do shit like pogo stick on stage and just weird shit. I had heard that he had been out of the band, and so I was like, oh, I wonder who the new singer is. And Gary Pepper, the leader of the band, the guitar player, his girlfriend was like kind of managing Jaguar. And I don't know, somehow we got in contact, and she had heard our cover of Axe Crazy, and I was like, yeah, thanks, we love the band, and I just kind of said, hey, so who's singing for the band now? And she's like, well, they don't have anybody. So I was like, okay, well, I'm interested to help out if it ever comes up. So it turns out they announced a show the following year. They were going to play this thing called Hard Rock Hell. And it was like 40 new wave of British heavy metal bands in Sheffield, England. And I was like, I got to go to this thing, man. Like, this is just to see these bands. And uh, I tried to get a hold of her, and it turns out her and Gary had broken up. So I got a hold of Gary and said, hey, man, who's singing for you guys? And he says, we don't have a singer, actually. We just agreed to do the festival because we thought we'd have somebody in time, but we're going to cancel. And I said, hey, man, listen, I will fly out there on my own dime to do this show if you want to have me. And he's like, let's give it a shot. So I flew out there. He picked me up from the airport. I met the guys. I met him and the bass player. We got really pissed drunk. The next day of the show, we were super hungover. I met the drummer on stage when we opened the festival, and I just said, "Look, guys, like we agreed to do just stuff off Power Games, and I think we did Backstreet Woman and like a couple of early tunes, but." I just said, look, I know the songs like the album. I don't know how you've been playing them live the last 40 years, but we got to kind of play them like the record, at least structure wise. I felt like Michael J. Fox, like in Back to the Future, when he goes on to the stage and grabs the guitar. I was like, okay, guys, like here are the changes. If I put a 1 in the air, that means we're going to the chorus. If I put a 2 in the air, that means we're coming up to like a bridge or a guitar solo. So just follow me for the changes. Like I even had the lyrics, like a lyric book down there because I was like, I want to make sure, even when you love a band, it's a lot to learn 14
Yeah.
songs or whatever, like
Yeah.
word for word. I wanted some kind of a guide. But anyway, we went out there and we killed it. It was amazing. And I ended up playing with the band for a few years. And to this day, we had never rehearsed once. It was completely punk rock. And we had done shows all over the world. They're great guys. We got along. We got along like a house on fire. We're like kindred spirits, man. I really, really, really appreciate the guys in that band. And we just get along so well. And so I got pretty busy with Night Demon and they wanted to move on and find a full-time guy, which they did, but they've still yet to play a gig with him. And that's been a couple of years. So you never know. I might pop in again and I'd love to sing for them. I brought them to America to my festival, the first time Jaguar ever played in America. And I was happy to do it. And so again, it's like I'm so blessed to be part of some kind of a story with people that I idolize. And sometimes you just gotta pop your head in there and ask and go, "Hey, it's me," like
Yeah.
and it happens. But I actually thought I did good. I'm a much better singer now than I was when I sang with them. So I'd love to have another crack at it. But I've listened to some live recordings and I did pretty good with them.
Very
That's
cool.
awesome. That's a great story.
Yeah,
It's a
for
true
sure.
story.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
Jarvis, we've been taking an hour of your time, and
That's
I think
okay.
I think you were going for dinner or something, but
Yeah, that's okay. They started without me.
that's all right. But
Listen, I appreciate you guys, man. It's so cool to connect with people that just love heavy metal, and like really, really love it. And just keep doing what you're doing. And like anytime I can be of any assistance to get anybody you want to get on this show, just let me know and I'll definitely be more than happy to bridge that gap. And yeah, without you guys talking about this stuff and coming to the gigs and being like an actual working part of the scene, a real cog in the wheel, like none of us would be doing this stuff. So thank you so much for all of this.
well, thank you so much again.
Yeah,
And
man.
again, everybody, please follow the Rock Fantasy Files and like look up for any Night Demon material and also Cirith Ungol and whatever Jarvis got going as an artist or manager, everything he seems, and now soon a movie filmmaker. So it
Yeah,
seems like
let's
we're on
see.
for
I haven't
an
made it yet.
awesome.
Let's see.
Yeah, yeah. Why? We'll be
Yeah.
waiting for it. All right, bud. Thank you
Yep.
so
All
much,
right.
everybody. Have a great night.
Have a good tour.
Thank you guys. All
Have a
right.
great
Take care.
tour.